Welcome to the Toka Backstage Podcast. Join Toka's Executive Director Chris Wolf in conversations with the artists and people behind the scenes of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation's performances and events.
Welcome to another special edition of Toka Backstage. This is Chris Wolf, the Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. It was my pleasure to speak with Kelly Freemon Craig, writer, director, producer of a couple movies that we talk about, and has a great new project coming up that is actually casting now. Thought we would share it with you. We hope to, in the very near future, be back to normal. But in the meantime, we're still here in our home office, and we look forward to seeing you again at the theater real soon. Please stay well and enjoy this episode of Toka Backstage. Okay, I'm with Kelly Freemon Craig. Hi, Kelly. How are you? Nice to see you.
Hey,
it's been a while.
I know.
I think the last time I saw you was maybe 20 years ago.
20 years ago,
or
yes.
So.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's about right.
Crazy, huh? So I've been dying to know, from when we first met, you were acting and doing some theater work.
Mm-hmm.
And then I lost track of you, and the next thing I know, you've written a movie that was produced with Michael Keaton and Carol Burnett and an all-star cast. How did you go from community theater to Hollywood screenwriter?
I mean, I was always interested from the time I was, really young. I think your drama class, the community theater drama class, was the first time I put a toe into the water of all this whole world. And I remember just really falling in love with it. The idea of creating new characters, I just loved that. And then, so I just kept kind of trying different things and feeling my way around the whole sort of theater idea, all the different hats that you can wear. And ultimately found that writing felt like the place I was. It felt like it fit me in so many different ways. You know what I mean? Like, I think the acting part of me, by the way, I think I'm a terrible actor.
I would have to disagree, but go ahead.
But what I loved about it was just being on like an imagination tangent. You know what I mean? Being able to just create. And I find myself even now, 39, doing kind of the same thing I was doing in that class all those years ago, which is just the idea of like, you get to create, anything that comes to your mind, you get to run with. So it's, I feel like I'm sort of doing the same thing. But anyway, so I ended up, becoming an English major, writing a bunch of stuff, and realizing that the stuff that I liked to write the most were the characters and the dialogue. Like, I loved storytelling, but I loved the idea of voices, of different types of people, and then the idea that you could sort of get them all together and make something happen. So I just started writing a bunch, and then wound up selling a first screenplay in, years ago now, when I was 25 or so, which was just kind of the thing that set me off. But that was a whole, that's a whole thing to even just sort of like start being paid as a writer and doing it professionally. It took years, of trying to make those connections and writing a bunch and really like kind of having no life. From probably 20 to 25, I feel like kind of all I did was write. So
well, that it kind of, isn't that what writers do though? I mean, it's kind of like it's the stereotypical sequestered in a room just over a typewriter or computer, just typing away, yes, living out their imagination. But I always found that kind of freeing as somebody who likes to write but never could do it professionally. is it just you can let your mind wander?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm definitely one of those people that has to write. You know what I mean? I think I don't feel normal unless I do that. It's something I feel like I'm clogged
Yeah.
emotionally or something. Like I feel like something, I'm definitely one of those people that cannot do it. Even if no one ever pays me to do it ever again, I'll do it for the rest of my life. I sort of have to.
And
So
the film was post grad. That was your first one that people may know of. Where did that come from? Is it true that you just let the characters take it away, or did you start out with like, I got to tell this story?
that one was personal in that it came out of um, graduating from college and and you're ready to like set out into the world and get a job and move your life forward, and then it's just nothing, it's just crickets, and dealing with that reality of you're the person in the workforce that has the least experience, you have none, and you're trying to somehow get a job, and having to do the thing about moving back in with your family, and just there's just a lot of like you just realize you've got a lot to learn at that age, and it's you got to start from the bottom and climb your way up the ladder, and so a lot of it was just writing about that experience. So that was, and it took several years of trying to turn that into a screenplay format, turn it into that format. And then once I sold that, and it sort of was like it grows legs and runs away, like all of a sudden you have this thing that you wrote, and then it sort of goes into the Hollywood meat grinder and comes out the other end. And that was a strange experience because you see it and you sort of almost don't recognize it,
I was going to say, did it come out as you intended, or did it just totally change?
No, it changed dramatically. And it was, it was strange because it's like you see kind of a kernel of what you originally intended, but then it just takes on a whole new life. And the thing that I realized too is, movies are they're such delicate things. It's just the smallest thing can completely send your tone an entirely different direction. It's like a music cue, or just cutting to somebody's expression that's just a little too something, and then the movie takes on a whole different thing. So it's such a delicate thing, and it's so easy for it to veer off from what was intended. Like that was the big lesson of that experience for me, is just how fragile the whole thing is.
So I'm guessing that would explain the reason why you not only wrote but also directed The Edge of 17. That you wanted to sort of make sure it was your vision.
Yeah, it really was about trying to protect the writing and get the thing that was in my head, onto the screen. And I realized that it's, the script itself is a blueprint, but there's so many details that are just, unless you're the person making the decision about the way that it's, the way that it's shot, and the music and the pacing and the way the comedy lands and the inflections, like unless you're the person that is guiding that process, it's, unless you have somebody that you're really, really in a lockstep with, I think it's, it's tough. You don't know what you're going to end up with exactly.
And how was the experience of like being the first time film director, accomplished writer, but first time film director, walking onto the set with like Woody Harrelson and Kara Sedgwick? Was it like, did you?
Yeah, daunting.
Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely, because these are pros who do it all the time, and you're doing it for the first time, and you're going through a learning curve. But but they were wonderfully gracious, and you know, I knew that while you know, I couldn't bring expertise in so many different areas. I mean, when you step on a set for the first time as a director, every single person on that set knows more than you do, has more experience than you do. And that's true even, you know, I think no matter how many times you direct, everybody in their particular departments knows more about their department than, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and that's the way it should be. But where I felt that I could bring real confidence and solidness was with the script, was with knowing who these characters were and what the story was that I was trying to tell. And so that really is what I think carried me through what would have otherwise been, you know, a just like flat out nerve-wracking experience. But I could claim that, and that, you know, and then the rest sort of works itself out if that kind of like the nucleus of it you understand on some level.
And from that, you won several awards. I see. I checked out your IMDb page before I called you. For first or best first time filmmaker or something. I forget what they were, but that's congratulations. I didn't
Thank
know.
you. Yeah.
Thank you. That must have been pretty exciting. I mean, to see your vision from blank page to silver screen must have been pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was absolutely yeah, it was the ride of a life. I mean, a lifetime. I mean, it really was like, I had a wonderful time creating that film, and it was personal, and to be able to see it live out there is a cool thing, and people connect to it and see themselves reflected in it. That's the part that's really neat.
And what did I see that it's also going to be, or was, a miniseries for television?
Yeah, so there was a pilot at some point that I, you know, basically when I wrote the movie, there was an opportunity to go and create a series afterwards, but I really was done with the movie. I was like, that's, you know, that's its life. It doesn't want to go on further than that. But then I sort of thought, well, there's an opportunity though to just tell authentic stories about teenagers and do it under this sort of umbrella of the title. And so I found a young writer director that I thought was great, and sort of just said, all right, what story do you want to tell about kids this age? And then just really tried to help her achieve her vision. So we filmed a pilot, and I honestly don't know what's going on with it now, because I just sort of did that part and then moved on to other stuff. So I'm not sure where it's landed.
Well, that's cool. So the other stuff is a project I think you're really excited about. You got the rights to do Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume.
Yes, yeah.
So how did that adventure start?
Well, I have been an enormous Judy Blume fan for ever and ever and ever. I mean, she really is like the first writer. She's the one that made me fall in love with reading and with stories and characters, the very first one. And so I've just loved her for years and years. And so there was a year and a half or 2 years ago now, a friend of mine, her daughter had just turned 11 and was reading Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. And I was talking to her about how much that book changed me when I was that age. I mean, it just made me feel so seen and understood. And really all Judy Blume's books did. You know, I felt like they said the unsayable. They just spoke to me, and it was really incredible to me to see that this many years later, her daughter was getting the same thing out of them. I mean, they're so, that's, I think, like the magic of her, is that she writes in a way that is so indelible. It's universal, it's timeless, it never, all the issues are still all the issues. So anyway, right around that time, so I started to look into the rights, and right around that time, Judy had tweeted that she was thinking about opening up her books to be adapted, but she wasn't going to do Margaret, because it's been the one that has been, I think, the closest to her heart, and the one that she was most worried would be, I think, done badly. When you do something that's like that exists for so long, I think that, like, that fear would be natural. I would have that fear. But myself and Jim Brooks, who was the producer on Edge of 17, flew out to talk to her and passionately pitch making a movie out of the book, and she agreed. So now we've been on this adventure, sort of. I've been writing the script, and we're just in the midst of casting, and we were supposed to film this summer, but it's pushed a couple of months because of everything that's going on, but all that happening imminently. And
are there any stars attached that you can identify, or is that hush hush right now?
We're really just starting that process. So
what is your hope when people go? Well, so you're writing and directing this one as well?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What is your hope for people when they go see it? What do you want them to walk away with after they see Are You There? Or yeah.
I hope that it takes them back to that time in their life when things were changing, when all of a sudden when you go from kid to adult, and you're in that zone where you're not quite a kid and you're not quite an adult, you're in this weird in-between zone. I remember it being really intense and scary and lonely and also exciting. I remember it being so many different emotions at once. And I think, I hope the movie takes people back to that part of their life, and compassionately. I also hope that it's, for women, I think the thing that Judy Blume has done is she says the unsayable. She talks about puberty and female bodies in ways that just still people don't really freely talk about. So that's exciting to think about, being able to just like dive deeply into this subject matter and have it all be fine to talk about. You know what I mean? Like, I hope that's the other thing that it does. And I think it also, I think that there's a great sort of central message of the film, that, it's a girl who's reaching out to something greater than her, that she doesn't quite know how to name. She doesn't know, she doesn't belong to a particular religion, but she's sort of searching for something outside of her that is making sure that we're all okay, and wondering if that exists. And I think that's a real human question that I think a lot of us on some level ask. And I think the movie tries to sort of dig into it. And I think the book deals with it in a way that I think is beautiful and unifying. And I think people will, I hope, walk out of it just feeling more connected with each other.
It's interesting because I can't help but think that as a writer, mm-hmm. and as a director, it's going to be difficult to sort of bridge the audiences, because you're going to have kids who are like in that age group, but then you're going to have the adults who have read the book like years ago, who it's like their Bible, and then mm-hmm. making it entertaining for both groups. Is that a concern of yours?
Yeah, but it's interesting. Part of what the adaptation does is it really tells stories. It tells female stories from 3 different generations. So Margaret, who's 12, her mom, who's in her, late 30s, and her grandma. And so, there are a lot of entrance points. There are a lot of places where you can come to the film and relate. And that's actually what I found when I reread the book years later is, when I first read it, it never really occurred to me that Margaret's mom was going through things, but when I read it as a 30-something mom, I went, oh my God, I never thought about the fact that she, so I related in a whole different way. And so I expanded those adult characters for that reason, because I felt myself really reflected in those women. And so I think that'll be the, I hope, surprise when women come and see the film, that they'll remember themselves as Margaret, but the surprise will be that they're Margaret's mom now too, or Margaret's grandma,
Yeah,
So
that's brilliant. And so I imagine too that there will be those looking at it going, very, I guess, with a fine-tooth comb going over, thinking, well, that's not how I see it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But
I think that's just par for the course with any adaptation of a very beloved book.
Yeah.
And I wear that all the time. I recognize that. But I think that, at least at this point, and I know through the filming, everybody involved, and myself at the top of the list, have such loyalty to the spirit of the book that even when things are changing because they have to for the medium, they're always in line with the spirit of what Judy Blume did.
Right.
And I hope that audiences will feel that,
I think that goes, just my personal feeling is that it kind of goes back to authenticity. Is if you're coming from an authentic place and your passion is true, then I think that is conveyed. I'm used to like live medium, but I imagine it happens even on film.
Yes. Yeah. I think if it resonates as true, then it's all, you accept it as, and that's the other thing I think Judy Blume does so well, is I think her characters feel so true, and everything that they go through just feels so real. Feels like a friend of yours. It feels like you. It feels like, I think that's the other thing, that Margaret especially feels like it's almost written like an 11-year-old girl writing a diary. It's so, it just captures that age and that feeling so well and so vividly.
So what is with this, just out of curiosity, I have to know, any plans to pull a Clint Eastwood and do acting, directing?
None whatsoever. Never. Only in the most dire of circumstances. Like.
So after this, what is your long term? Are there other projects out there that you want to tackle?
Yeah, I really kind of go with where my heart takes me, as so I don't know what will be next after this. I'm just kind of writing it out and seeing where I feel like creatively makes sense to go next. So but I love writing and directing. I love the combo of the two. I've tried to do, I've looked at things where I am sent a script that somebody else has written, and even if I am madly in love with it, it's hard, there's something in me that it's hard to dive in, because there's something about the process of writing for me that it's so important to the whole making of a film. Maybe one day I'll do that, but right now it feels like I'll probably stick with writing and then directing.
But at least I have to say that congratulations, or that's awesome, because having been a person who has had to direct a project that they had no desire to do, but just had to do it. It's like, I wouldn't do that again if, for all the money in the world, because it's
Yes.
so painful. You're trying to pull something out of a script that it's just not there, and it's like,
yes,
it's just
yes, yes, yeah. No, it's yeah, no, totally. And the amount of times that you do it in theater, the amount of times that you have to just put the play up and rehearse it and play over and over and over. It's like it's the same thing in film and television, in that you have to do so many takes, and then you've got to edit it, and you're watching it so many times that you have to have that thing at the center of it that you love, because you're going to live with it on repeat for a long time,
Yeah.
So yeah.
So one of the things that the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation not only does shows or presents programs, but we also try to help mentor and encourage young artists coming up. We have a show that we do, which I think I've reached out to you a couple of times to see if you're available to judge, at South Bay's Got Talent. And we have like songwriters who are, who are young kids who are just crazy talented.
Yeah.
What is when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to get into the film business, what's your words of wisdom to them?
I always tell everybody to start writing, no matter how they want to, no matter whether they want to act or direct or produce. I say, write, because the thing about it is, if you write the script, then you have a certain amount of leverage, because you've written something, so you can kind of control it to a certain extent, or you know what I mean? You own it. There's an ownership that allows you to have access to the other things, like being able to act in it or produce it or direct it. So I think it's a great entrance point. And I also think it's just a great way to sharpen every other skill. When you're writing, you're hearing the cadences, and you're hearing how you might do it and how you might block it. You're hearing how you thinking about how you might film it. So that's helping with directing. Producing, you're thinking about, well, how am I going to do it? How am I feasibly, logistically going to do it? So it helps every single thing. And the other thing is, I think that we're in a time where you can write something and film it on your iPhone and throw it up on the internet, and you'll have eyeballs. You'll have an immediate audience. You'll have people reacting to it. Which is what we do, just on a heightened level. Essentially, we make the film and then we put it in front of test audiences to have reactions, and then we react from that information, and we edit it more, and we add different things. But anybody right now can do that on some level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's I think empowering. It wasn't that way when I was coming up, and now it is, and I think that's really cool.
Well, and I think it was Ira Glass who said it was. I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, create something but just keep creating. You don't have to. It can be bad.
Yes.
But just keep creating, because eventually, through that process of creating, it will get better.
Yes, exactly. And also allow it to be bad. I think that's the other thing. I'm such a proponent of just like shitty first drafts, really just letting yourself free to just write with abandon, and practice. And if you don't allow yourself that, I think it's hard to get anywhere good. You know, you have to allow yourself the errors, and yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to ask you, I know that filming for Are You There, God is been postponed, but is there a target release date when people can be looking for this?
It'll be sometime in 2021. So yeah, we don't have a release date yet, but it'll
Yeah.
be sometime next year.
Awesome. And I also noticed that The Edge of 17, for those who want to check it out, is on Netflix now, I think.
Netflix. Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool. It's so funny because I mean, again, we haven't seen each other in I don't know how long, but just
Yeah.
to know that this work that you've created is out there and doing, I mean, I'm I'm just in awe of what you've accomplished. It's so awesome.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have to say you were one of the first people that sort of gave me confidence to just keep going. And I remember I took your drama class, and then there was like a second run of the drama classes, and I guess because I was a good student, you were like, "Hey, do you want to come like be an assistant and help with the kids?" And I remember being so flattered and touched, and and it gave me just that little oomph of, oh, maybe I'm not bad at this, and that I think means so much at that age. It means so much to just feel like, hey, just to get that little push that says, hey, I think you're good at this, keep going.
Well,
um
and you
so
were good at it. So I'm actually I'm a little upset that you're not acting anymore, but that's okay.
Well, anyway, I appreciate that. It's amazing when you look back and you think about all the little steps that sort of like gets you where you are, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you ever, speaking of acting, if you ever need like a corpse or somebody to like lie, so I'm, call me. You have my number. I was always thinking, before Law and Order went off, that was my goal. Was I just wanted to be like the guy at the beginning who dies, and it's like under the blanket.
Oh, we're gonna do that. Okay,
I
I'm
can
telling
do
you
that.
right now, I'm gonna figure it out.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
And one of these days, I'll get you to be a judge on South Bay's Got Talent. But
I would love to do it. Yes, absolutely. Please call me.
I want everyone out there to check out Postgrad and Edge of 17 and wait patiently for Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Uh, Wonderful work, and I can't wait to catch up with you again later.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you.
Nice to see you.